She was not arrested. She was not accused. She was not told she had done anything wrong. She was simply told to step back. The American soldier said it calmly, like a man repeating an instruction he had already used too many times that morning, just for 2 days. The German woman stood in the road with her 3 children pressed against her legs, their faces dirty, their coats too thin for the cold that still clung to May. Her youngest was crying already. The middle one was silent. The oldest was watching the soldiers not with fear but with the sharp attention of a child who sensed something permanent was happening. 2 days? The soldier said again. Another soldier reached down and lifted the youngest child out of her arms. She gasped, not screamed. Gasped. Because screaming made things worse. 1 child. Then the second. Then the third. Each separation lasted only seconds. Efficient. Practiced. Almost gentle. The truck engine was already running. She stood there, empty-armed, fingers still curled, as if her children were somehow still inside them. She tried to speak, but her voice would not form words fast enough to stop what was already underway. Processing, someone said. Medical checks, someone else added. Standard procedure. The truck pulled away. She did not chase it. She knew better. 2 days later, the Americans would return. That was the promise. But when the truth finally surfaced buried in medical language, delayed paperwork, and a decision made by someone who never met her, it became clear that those children were never supposed to be gone that long. The separation was never meant to last, and what happened in those 48 hours was not an accident. It was a chain of decisions no one wanted to take responsibility for. The paperwork exists, but what actually happened after the truck disappeared was never supposed to be understood. May 12, 1945, 7:41 a.m. Outskirts of Magdeburg, Germany. The road was still wet from last night's rain. Mud clung to boots. Broken brick littered the ditches. The smell of smoke lingered in the air, even weeks after the fighting had moved on. Victory had been declared, but nothing here looked victorious. Anna Keller stood beside the road with her 3 children clustered against her, watching an American checkpoint materialize out of chaos. 2 trucks, 8 soldiers, 1 clipboard. That was all it took. A lieutenant stood off to the side, conferring quietly with the captain whose uniform looked freshly pressed. Their voices were low, controlled. This was not combat. This was administration. Anna felt the shift before anyone spoke to her. She had learned to recognize it during the war, the moment when people stopped seeing individuals and started seeing categories. A sergeant approached. "Children will be temporarily relocated," he said. "Not may. Not might." Will Anna's grip tightened instinctively around her youngest. Lucas, 4 years old, his face pressed into her coat. Greta, 7, clutched on her skirt. Emil, 9, stood slightly forward, alert, watching every movement. "Why?" Anna asked. The sergeant hesitated a fraction too long. Then, food distribution. Medical screening. Medical screening. Anna looked at her children. Thin, yes. Dirty, yes. But alive? Alert? Holding onto her. "How long?" she asked. The captain glanced up from the clipboard. "This time?" he answered. 2 days, he said. Maximum, maximum. That word mattered. 2 days meant rules still existed. 2 days meant this was reversible. 2 days meant compliance was survivable. Anna nodded once. That was the moment everything locked into place. The soldiers moved fast after that, as if speed itself were part of the order. One knelt, lifted Lucas. Another guided Greta forward. Emil was told politely to climb into the truck himself. He did. Anna saw the calculation on his face. If I don't fight, this might end sooner. The canvas flap dropped. The engine revved, and just like that, the road became quiet again. No shouting. No violencia. No witnesses who thought anything extraordinary had happened. Anna stood alone in the road, the absence of weight in her arms disorienting. Her hands trembled. Her mouth tasted like metal. She told herself what the captain had told her. 2 days. She returned to the apartment and waited. She waited through the morning, through the afternoon, through the night. The next day, she went to the local American command office. The clerk checked the ledger and frowned. "They're still listed as temporary displacement," he said. Temporary. She went back again that evening. The answer changed slightly. Still under review. Review. By the second night, Anna stopped sleeping. By the third morning, the word temporary disappeared from the paperwork, and somewhere else far from her empty apartment, a medical chart was being updated on a child who should never have been separated, long enough for the body to forget what safety felt like. The order had sounded temporary, but it had already crossed a line where it could no longer be undone. May 12, 1945, 9:09 a.m. U.S. Temporary Child Processing Point, outside Mug. The building had once been a factory. Now, it was a holding site, concrete floors scrubbed with disinfectant, windows filmed over with dust, the air humming with generators that never quite drowned out the crying. The truck backed in and cut its engine. Silence rushed the space like a held breath finally released. "Down slowly," a soldier said. Lucas was passed from arm to arm. Greta followed, boots slipping on the wet ramp. Emil jumped last, landing hard, steadying himself without help. He looked for a sign-any. Signet. This was temporary. There wasn't one. A corporal with a clipboard pointed them toward separate lines. "Ages," he said, not looking up. 4 goes left, 7 and 9. Right. Greta froze. Emil stepped in front of her without thinking. "We stay together," he said. The corporal finally looked up. His face tightened not with cruelty, but with schedule. "Rules," he said. "Move." Lucas reached for Emil, finger splayed, panic already rising. A nurse intercepted, lifting him cleanly away. Lucas screamed then, the sound thin and piercing, bouncing off concrete and steel. "Just a bit," the nurse said. "Too quickly. We'll be back soon." Soon. The door shut between them. May 12, 1945, 10:02 a.m. intake desk. Names were written down incorrectly the first time. The clerk spelled Keller with 2 L's. Corrected it. Then guessed at dates of birth. No one asked the children. The paperwork didn't need their voices. Intake, LOG, children. Civilian status. Temporary displacement reason. Medical screening. Nutrition. Temporary. Medical. Nutrition. Words that promised care while buying time. Greta and Emil were assigned metal cots in a long room that smelled of bleach and damp blankets. A bell rang somewhere. The door locked with a sound too heavy for a place meant to be brief. Emil counted steps to the door. 12. Too far to run before anyone noticed. Greta sat and folded her hands, doing exactly what she had been taught to do when adults made decisions she didn't understand. 2 days, she whispered. Emil didn't answer. May 12, 1945, 11:27 a.m. Pediatric ward. Lucas lay under a thin blanket, eyes glassy, breath quick. The nurse checked his temperature and frowned. "Dehydrated," she said to the medic, and scared. The medic scribbled, already behind schedule. Medical note. Child for recommend fluids. Monitor for stress response. Stress response. No checkbox 4. Separated from mother. May 12, 1945. 1:40 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment Anna cleaned because there was nothing else to do. She scrubbed the table where 3 bowls had been set that morning. She folded clothes that no longer needed folding. She stood at the window and watched trucks pass, counting them, memorizing routes. At 1:40, she walked to the command post. They said 2 days, she told the clerk. The clerk nodded without sympathy. Still within the window. She returned home and sat on the floor until evening. May 12, 1945, 7:18 p.m. Holding facility dinner arrived late and cold. Greta pushed the food around her plate. Emil ate, quickly, mechanically, eyes never leaving the door. Somewhere down the corridor, Lucas cried, until the sound thinned to a hoarse rasp. Greta stood. I need to see my brother. The guard shook his head. Different ward. How is he? Emil asked. The guard hesitated, then chose the safest answer. Being watched. Watched. That night, the lights dimmed, but did not turn off. The generator hummed. Emil did not lie down. Greta slept in short bursts, waking every time footsteps passed. May 13th, 1945, 6:12. AM Pediatric Ward. Lucas woke burning with fever. The nurse's jaw tightened. He's not responding well, she said. We need more fluids. The medic nodded, distracted. We'll escalate if it continues. Escalate, not reunify. May 13th, 1945, 9:04 a.m. Command Post Anna stood again at the counter. The answer changed, subtly. Extended review. For how long? The officer didn't know or didn't say. Anna felt the promise of 2 days collapse into something shapeless. Time had turned against her. Quietly. Officially. By nightfall, the 48 hours were no longer a boundary. They were a corridor, one that narrowed with every signature and every delay. The separation had become routine, and routine, once established, is harder to stop than violence. May 13th, 1945, 2:16 p.m. U.S. Child Processing Point. Outside Magdeburg, the second day did not announce itself. There was no bell. No order shouted, no acknowledgement that a line had been crossed. The only change was administrative. A courier arrived with a leather pouch and a face already tired of being responsible for messages that ruined people. AC lives. He handed the pouch to a lieutenant who hadn't slept enough to question what was inside. The lieutenant opened it, scanned a single page, and felt the weight of the word extended settle into his shoulders. Internal memo: Child Displacement Unit, temporary holds, exceeding 48 hours require regional review. No reunification without clearance. No reunification. The memo didn't say deny. It didn't say separate. It said wait. Waiting was safer than deciding. May 13th, 1945, 3:02 p.m. Greta, in Emil's ward. Greta noticed the guards had changed. Different boots, different voices. Les patients. That was how she knew something had gone wrong. She sat on her cot and traced a crack in the concrete floor with her finger, listening to Emil argue in a low voice at the door. They said 2 days, he repeated. Today is the second day. The guard didn't raise his voice. Orders changed. Why? The guard shrugged. Not my call. Not my call was a sentence adults used when they wanted children to stop asking. Greta stood and went to Emil's side. Is Lucas coming back? She asked. The guard didn't answer. Silence was an answer. May 13th, 1945, 4:11 p.m. Pediatric ward. Lucas's fever broke briefly, just enough to mislead everyone. The nurse wiped his forehead and smiled with relief that felt premature even as it happened. There, she said softly. See? You're okay. Lucas didn't respond. His eyes drifted, unfocused. His fingers curled and uncurled against the sheet, searching for something that wasn't there. Mama, he whispered. The nurse swallowed. She checked his chart again. Medical note. Child 4. Transient fever reduction. Continue observation. Observation. Always observation. Never action. May 13th, 1945, 5:28 p.m. Local command post. Anna Keller was standing when the officer finally spoke the truth she had already felt in her bones. It's no longer just a 2-day hold, he said. The words were careful. Controlled. Anna leaned forward slightly, as if the meaning might fall out of him if she got close enough. Then what is it? He hesitated, then answered with the language of bureaucracy, language designed to diffuse blame. It's under regional review now. Review by whom? She asked. He didn't answer. When will I see my children? She asked instead. The officer rubbed his temples. I can't give you a time. The sentence landed like a verdict. Anna felt something hardened inside her, not panic, not grief. Understanding, This was no longer about safety. It was about liability. Children moved in war, created records. Records created responsibility. Responsibility required someone to be wrong, and no one wanted to be wrong now that victory had been declared. May 13th, 1945, 7:44 p.m. holding facility. Dinner came and went untouched. Emil sat rigid, counting minutes in his head the way he had learned to count bombs during air raids. "This isn't right," he said again. "They promised." Promises meant nothing without signatures. Greta lay down and pulled the blanket to her chin, listening to Lucas' cry down the corridor, each sound weaker than the last. She pressed her hands over her ears. It didn't help. May 13th, 1945, 9:17 p.m. Pediatric ward. The fever returned suddenly. Not gradually, not politely. Lucas convulsed, briefly, his small body arching in the bed. The nurse shouted for the doctor. Lights snapped brighter. Footsteps ran. The doctor arrived and took one look at the monitor. "Get fluids now," he ordered, "and oxygen." The nurse hesitated. "Should we call the mother?" The doctor didn't answer right away. He looked at the chart, at the stamp, at the word temporary that no longer matched reality. "Yes," he said finally. "Call her. May 13th, 1945, 9:46 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The knock came like an accusation. Sharp. Repeated. Anna opened the door to a soldier she didn't recognize. "Your son is ill," he said. "You need to come." That was all. No apology. No explanation. Hoosed movement. As Anna followed him into the night, she understood something too late. The second day had not been a delay. It had been a decision, and on Samade it was already racing ahead of her toward consequences. No one could now stop. May 14th, 1945, 12:03 a.m. U.S. Field Hospital. Outside Magdeburg. The hallway smelled like bleach and fear. Not panic fear that had already settled into the walls, absorbed by the floors, woven into the habits of the staff who worked here long enough to recognize when something had gone irreversibly wrong. Anna Keller was walking too fast. A nurse kept pace beside her, one hand hovering near Anna's elbow, not touching, not guiding, just ready. The sound of Anna's shoes echoed too loudly on the linoleum, each step puncturing the silence. "This way," the nurse said. Anna did not ask questions. She had learned that questions slowed movement, and movement was the only thing that mattered now. They stopped outside a door marked Pediatric Restricted. Anna pushed it open before the nurse could warn her. Lucas lay on the bed, impossibly small beneath a sheet that looked too heavy for his chest. Tubes ran from his arm. His lips were pale. A monitor ticked softly, unevenly. For one dangerous second, Anna thought she was too late. Then Lucas stirred. "Mama," he whispered. The sound broke something open in her chest. "I'm here," she said, dropping to her knees beside the bed. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She took his hand. It was hot. Too hot. The doctor stepped forward. Voice careful. Professional. "He's been very sick," he said. "Severe dehydration." Shock response. Shock. Anna turned toward him sharply. "From what?" The doctor hesitated, because the answer was not bacteria. It was not injury. It was not something that arrived suddenly. It was separation, but that word did not appear on charts. "We're stabilizing him," the doctor said instead. "We should have contacted you sooner." "Should have..." The monitor stuttered. The nurse stiffened. The doctor's posture changed immediately. "Lucas," he said sharply. Anna felt the hand in hers go slack. The monitor's rhythm slowed erratic now, as if the machine itself was uncertain what to do next. "Get ready," the doctor ordered. "Now." The room filled with movement, gloved hands, commands spoken fast and clipped. Anna was gently but firmly moved back from the bed. "No," she said. "No, please," the nurse held her shoulders. "Stay here. He needs to hear you." Anna leaned forward, voice shaking now. "I'm here," she repeated. "Mama is here." The monitor flattened briefly, then surged again. For one impossible moment, Ope returned. Then the line straightened. The sound that followed was not loud, but it was absolute. The doctor checked once, then again. He looked at Anna. "I'm so sorry." Anna stared at him. "No," she said. The word didn't sound like denial. It sounded like refusal. She reached for Lucas's hand again. It was already cooling. May 14th, 1945, 1:18 a.m. Administrative Annex. A typewriter clacked. The officer's fingers moved fast. Practiced, eager to finish before the night ended. Medical incident report subject. Kella Lucas. Age 4. Cause of death. Acute systemic failure. Contributing factors. Malnutrition. Dehydration. No mention of stress. No mention of separation. No mention of a promise. The paper was signed, stamped, filed. May 14th, 1945, 6:32 a.m. Holding facility. Greta woke to silence. Not the quiet of rest. The quiet of absence. She sat up slowly, heart pounding, listening for Lucas's breathing down the corridor. Nothing. Emil stood already, gripping the bars of the door. A guard entered and froze when he saw their faces. "You need to come with me," he said. Greta's mouth went dry. "Where is our brother?" The guard did not answer. May 14th, 1945, 9:07 a.m. Field Hospital. Anna sat beside Lucas's body, refusing to let go. Greta and Emil stood in the doorway, too frightened to step closer, too confused to speak. Anna looked up when she saw them. Her face was dry. Her eyes were not. "He waited for me," she said softly. "They said 2 days." "Eh?" "Waited." No one corrected her, because there was nothing left to correct. Outside, the war continued to conclude itself in reports and ceremonies and speeches about liberation. Inside that small hospital room, the truth settled heavily. The children had not been taken because they were unsafe. They had been taken because it was easier to move them than to protect a promise. And once the 48 hours passed, no one wanted to be responsible for putting them back. The separation had killed a child. But the paperwork would never say that. It would say illness. It would say complications. It would say unavoidable. And by the time anyone realized what the temporary order had done, it was already irreversible. May 14th, 1945, 11:38. AIM U.S. Field Hospital. Outside Magdeburg. The body was prepared quickly. Too quickly. A nurse smoothed the sheet over Lucas's chest, careful not to meet Anna's eyes. Another adjusted the tag at the foot of the bed, fingers moving with professional speed, as if efficiency might contain what had already escaped control. Anna still hadn't moved. She sat on the chair beside the bed, one hand resting on the sheet where Lucas's shoulders should have been. The room smelled of disinfectant and something faintly sweet, the odor hospitals never admit exists. Greta and Emil stood near the door. They had not cried yet. Children often didn't cry when the truth was too large to hold. "Is he sleeping?" Greta asked quietly. Anna closed her eyes. "No," she said. "He's not." The nurse stiffened. The doctor looked down at the floor. There were words he was supposed to say. Next phrases about nothing more we could do, about circumstances, about war conditions. He did not say them, because the lie would have been obvious. May 14th, 1945, 12:14 p.m. Administrative Annex. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to decide how this would be remembered. A major, a captain, a medical officer, and a clerk sat around a narrow table. The window was open, letting in the smell of spring and distant rubble fires. "This can't escalate," the major said flatly. "We are days from full handover. Any investigation delays everything." The medical officer cleared his throat. The child was malnourished before intake. "Yes," the captain said quickly. "That goes in the report." "And the separation?" the clerk asked, then immediately wished he hadn't. Silence. The major leaned back. Temporary displacement was authorized. Medical necessity followed. followed, not caused. That distinction mattered. Put it this way, the captain said. If the mother hadn't resisted, the process would have been smoother. No one challenged that. It was easier to imply fault than accept responsibility. The major nodded. Then that's how it reads. Internal summary. Not for release incident. Pediatric fatality. Cause. Pre-existing malnutrition and acute illness operational factors. None. The word erased 48 hours. May 14th, 1945, 2:27 p.m. Holding facility, Greta and Emil were returned to their ward briefly while arrangements were made. Returned as if nothing fundamental had changed. Greta sat on her cot, staring at the blanket folded at the foot of the bed, Lucas's blanket, the one he'd carried in the truck. Someone had placed it there without explanation. She picked it up and pressed it to her face. It still smelled faintly like him. Emil stood rigid, fists clenched. They lied, he said. Greta nodded. Mama said 2 days. No, Emil replied, voice breaking for the first time. They did. May 14th, 1945, 4:09 p.m. Field Hospital courtyard. Anna stood alone while the paperwork caught up. A soldier approached, holding a folder. We'll need you to sign, he said. She looked at the papers without really seeing them. What happens now? She asked. The soldier hesitated. Your children will be released back to you. Children. Plural? The word hit like a bruise. She signed anyway. Because refusing wouldn't bring Lucas back. Because the system moved forward, whether she agreed or not. May 14th, 1945. 6:45 p.m. Roadside outside Magdeburg, Greta and Emil were returned at sunset. Not in a ceremony. Not with apologies. A truck stopped. The canvas lifted. 2 children stepped down. Anna wrapped her arms around them so tightly they gasped. She did not care. Behind them, the truck drove away. It did not stop again. That night, Anna sat between her remaining children on the floor of their apartment. No one spoke. Outside, bells rang to mark another day of peace. Peace, it turned out, had room for this. The system had closed ranks. The file was complete. The death explained, but the truth row, an unmistakable, remained where it always did when paperwork lied. With the people who survived it. And survival, Anna now understood, came with a cost no report would ever calculate. The question no one in uniform would ask had already answered itself. Who was responsible? Everyone had touched the decision, which meant no one would carry it. May 10th, 1945, 8:22. I am Magdeburg, Municipal Office. Usanlia Sondeska. The line moved slowly. Too slowly for grief. Too slowly for anger. Anna Keller stood with Greta and Emil beside her, the floor cold to the thin soles of her shoes. The room smelled of paper, ink, and damp coats. A fan clicked uselessly in the corner, stirring nothing. On the wall, a map of Germany had been pinned and repinned so many times, it looked wounded. A clerk stamped documents without looking up. THUMP. 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 Each sound felt like a decision being finalized somewhere she could not reach. Next, the clerk said. Anna stepped forward and slid the folder across the desk. Her hands were steady now. That frightened her, more than shaking would have. The clerk flipped pages. 2 children, he said, matter of fact. Release confirmed. Anna didn't correct him. Correcting people had consequences. She watched his finger pause over a line, then move on. Whatever question had occurred to him died silently between stamps. Behind her, Greta traced a circle on the back of Emil's coat with one finger, the way she used to do to calm Lucas when he was afraid. The motion had no effect now. Sign here, the clerk said. Anna signed. Any complaints to file? He asked, already reaching for the next folder. Complaints. The word suggested options. Agency. A path forward. Anna looked up. About what? The clerk shrugged. Operational matters. She pictured the road, the promise, the 48 hours, the hospital room. All of that, she said. The clerk froze just for a beat. Then he shook his head. You'd need it named. Incident. A responsible officer. Responsible. Anna let the silence stretch. The clerk cleared his throat. Next. May 15th, 1945, 10:41. AM U.S. Field Hospital Records Office. A clerk filed Lucas's chart under a numeric code that meant resolved. He hesitated at the last page. The medical incident report and considered adding a note. Something vague, something that might explain the timing. He didn't. Notes invited questions. Questions invited delay. Delay invited scrutiny. The chart slid into a drawer and disappeared. May 15th, 1945, 1:03 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The apartment felt smaller now. 2 beds instead of 3. 2 cups on the table. 2 coats on the hook. Greta sat on the floor, arranging stones she'd collected from the courtyard into careful lines. Emil watched from the window, tracking trucks as they passed, counting them as if numbers still meant safety. Anna opened the cupboard and reached for bread. Her hand stopped halfway. The third portion was muscle memory. She closed the cupboard and leaned her forehead against the wood, breathing slowly until the room steadied. A knock came at the door. She stiffened. A woman stood outside Jumaine, middle-aged, carrying a small parcel wrapped in cloth. I heard, she said softly. About your boy. Anna nodded. The woman hesitated. Did the Americans? Anna shook her head once. The woman understood. She always had. May 15th, 1945. 4:26 p.m. U.S. Command Office. Captain Reynolds. Read the summary again. He didn't like it. Not because it was wrong, but because it was thin. No single failure. No single decision. Just drift. He signed anyway. Signing was easier than reopening. Outside, soldiers laughed. Someone had found beer. Someone had news from home. The war's end pressed forward. Unstoppable. Reynolds set the file aside and told himself what everyone else told themselves. This wasn't intentional. This was unfortunate. This happens in war. He did not tell himself the one thing that mattered. This could have been stopped. May 15th, 1945, 7:18 p.m. Riverside near Magdeburg. Anna walked with Greta and Emil along the river as dusk settled in. The water moved steadily, indifferent to borders and uniforms and signatures. Greta skipped a stone. It sank immediately. Did he feel scared? She asked suddenly. Anna swallowed. Yes, she said, but he wasn't alone at the end. Greta nodded, accepting this as truth, whether it was complete or not. Emil stared at the water. They said 2 days, he said. Anna stopped walking. Yes, she said. They were wrong. No, Anna replied quietly. They were careful. The distinction mattered. Careful people could still destroy something if they moved slowly enough and shared the weight. They stood together as the light faded. 3 figures now where there had once been 4. Somewhere, files were closed. Orders expired. Attention shifted. Responsibility, spread thin enough, had evaporated. And in that absence, the truth settled not in records or rulings, but in the daily work of living with what could not be returned. May 18th, 1945, 9:36 a.m. Allied Review Office. Magdeburg silence had a shape. It looked like a closed door at the end of a corridor. It sounded like a typewriter stopping midline. It felt like a question that was never asked because everyone already knew the answer would be inconvenient. Anna Keller stood in the hallway with a folded paper clutched in her hand. It was not a complaint. It was not an accusation. It was a request. A request to know why. The clerk at the desk barely glanced at it. You've already been processed, he said. Your children are back with you. Children. Plural again. Anna waited. One of them is dead. The clerk's fingers paused over the stamp. He did not look up. That's already been reviewed. Reviewed? By whom? When? With what authority? She did not ask. She already knew how the answers worked. Another officer stepped in. Older, rank visible but carefully unthreatening. "Frau Keller," he said gently, "there is no open inquiry related to your case." Case? She felt the word reduce her son to a file number. "So that's it?" she asked. The officer nodded. There was no misconduct. Anna let the paper fall onto the desk between them. The officer did not pick it up. May 19th, 1945, 6:14 p.m. Displaced persons housing block. Greta woke from a nap crying. Anna reached her before the sound fully formed, pressing Greta's face into her shoulder. Greta's body shook with sobs she didn't yet have language for. "He was calling," Greta said. "I heard him." Anna said nothing. What comfort existed now had to live without certainty. Across the room, Emil sat at the table with a pencil and scrap paper. He was drawing the truck. Not the soldiers, not the uniforms. Just the truck. He erased the wheels over and over until the paper thinned. May 21st, 1945. 11:02 a.m. Allied Headquarters. Internal briefing. A major summarized the week's outstanding issues. Child displacement fatalities. 1, he said. No further action recommended. The room did not react. Media risk minimal, another officer added. No documentation indicating misconduct. Minimal. The word passed without resistance. They moved on to food distribution. May 23rd, 1945, 8:47 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The apartment was quiet in a new way now. Not the anxious quiet of waiting, but the resigned quiet of something concluded. Anna sat at the table with a candle burning low. Greta slept curled on the bed beside Emil, their bodies unconsciously still angled toward where Lucas used to sleep. Anna opened a small notebook. She had begun writing not letters, not complaints but records. Dates, times, words spoken. 2 days. Temporary. She wrote them carefully, as if accuracy itself might one day matter. She did not know if anyone would ever read it, but she knew silence was how this disappeared. June 2nd, 1945, 3:18 p.m. Magdeburg Street market life resumed unevenly. Food stalls reopened. People traded rumors instead of rations. Soldiers walked the streets with less urgency, more laughter. Anna watched an American patrol pass. She did not look away. One of the soldiers glanced at her, then at the children beside her, and hesitated just for a moment. Then he looked forward and kept walking. That moment mattered, because it meant someone remembered, even if the system had decided not to. June 10th, 1945, 10:05 a.m. Administrative Archive. A clerk slid a thin folder into a cabinet marked Closed Nitrogen Monoxide Action. The drawer shut with a soft click. Inside, a single sheet rested at the back. Note unfiled. Delay in reunification exceeded guidance window. It was not signed. It would not be cited, but it existed. That night, Anna lay awake, listening to Greta and Emil breathe. The war had ended. The authorities had moved on, but the silence left behind was not empty. It was heavy with everything that had been decided without her. She understood now what victory speeches would never say. Some losses do not come from enemy fire. They come from promises made lightly and kept loosely. And when silence follows, it is not because nothing happened. It is because what happened was too uncomfortable to name. July 3rd, 1945, 2:41 p.m. Allied Records Depot Halle. The building was cooler than the streets outside. Thick stone walls kept the summer heat at bay, trapping the smell of dust, ink, and old paper. Ceiling fans pushed warm air in slow, tired circles. Rows of metal cabinets stretched into the dimness like graves arranged alphabetically. A junior records officer named Lieutenant Mark Feldman stood at a long table, sleeves rolled, sorting files marked displaced civilians' children. His job was simple. reconcile inconsistencies before final archiving. Simple jobs were the ones that found problems. He paused over a thin folder. Too thin. Most displacement cases ran dozens of pages intake. Transfers, medical notes, release orders. This one had gaps. Dates that didn't align. A hold extended without an authorization signature. He flipped the cover. Keller, Lucas, 8-4. Status. Resolved how? Feldman scanned the timeline. Intake May 12th. Hold extension. May 13th medical incident. May 14th case closure. May 5th 10th. No reunification order. No parental notification times. No escort authorization. That was not resolution. That was compression. He frowned and pulled the adjacent folder. Keller, Greta. Keller, Emil's status. Released to Guardian, released after the medical incident. Feldman felt the small prickle at the back of his neck, the sensation every clerk learned to recognize when paper started contradicting itself. He pulled a blank form and began listing discrepancies. July 3rd, 1945, 4:06 p.m. Record Supervisor's Office. The supervisor, Captain Eleanor Briggs, read Feldman's summary without expression. Her office smelled of tobacco and lemon oil. Outside, trucks rumbled past, carrying supplies east. "You're suggesting procedural failure," she said. "I'm suggesting procedural drift," Feldman replied carefully. "The timelines don't support the narrative." Briggs tapped the paper with a pen. "There's no allegation." "I know," Feldman said. "That's the problem. There's also no authorization." Briggs leaned back. Procedural drift was dangerous language. It implied systems could cause harm without intent. Intent was easier to deny than structure. She opened the Keller folder and read again, slower this time. The room went quiet. "Who signed the extension?" she asked. "No one," Feldman said. Briggs closed the file. "Then it needs a review note." A review note was not an investigation. It was a breath mark, a sign that the file had once been alive. Records annotation, internal timeline discrepancy noted in child displacement case Keller. Hold duration exceeded guidance without documented authorization. No further action recommended at this time. At TV. Time. July 5th, 1945, 9:22 a.m. Magdeburg Anna Keller stood in line for bread when a man approached her. Not in uniform, a civilian jacket, worn shoes, a notebook tucked under his arm. "Frau Keller?" he asked quietly. She nodded, instinctively stepping back. "My name is Feldman," he said. "I work with Allied Records." Records. Her stomach tightened. "I'm not here to reopen anything," he added quickly. I needed to confirm something." "Confirm what?" "That you were told the separation would last 2 days." Anna did not answer immediately. "Then..." "Yes." Feldman wrote it down. "And no one contacted you before your son was transferred to the hospital?" "No." "And you were not informed when the hold was extended?" "No." He closed the notebook. "That's all," he said. "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry." It was the first apology that didn't feel procedural. July 6, 1945, 6:58 p.m. Allied Records Depot. Briggs filed the annotated Keller folder in a different cabinet. Not closed. Not active. A third place. Pending administrative review. That label changed nothing immediately, but it prevented the file from going silent. That night, Anna sat with Greta and Emil at the table, cutting bread into careful portions. Greta asked about school. Emil asked about winter. Life pressed forward, indifferent to annotations and cabinets. But somewhere, in a room that smelled of paper and dust, a file had learned to breathe again. It would not scream. It would not accuse, but it would resist erasure. And sometimes, in the long aftermath of war, that was the most dangerous thing of all. August 18th, 1945, 10:14 a.m. Allied Legal Review Committee. Frankfurt. The room was too quiet for what was happening inside it. Tall windows let in a thin, late summer light that made dust float visibly in the air. A ceiling fan turned without conviction. Around the table sat 5 people who had learned, during the war, how to listen without reacting. Folders lay open, not one. Several. Captain Eleanor Briggs stood at the head of the table, hands resting flat on the wood. "This is not an isolated file," she said. That sentence changed everything. She slid 3 folders forward. Collier, Lucas, Magdebur, Snyder, Ernst, Ali Vogat, Marierfut Difrat, Marierfut, Difrantaus, 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 Difrantaus. Same structure. Temporary separation, extended hold, delayed reunification. Medical. Collapse. A legal advisor cleared his throat. "Are you alleging misconduct?" Briggs shook her head. "I'm alleging design failure." Design failure was harder to dismiss. "These separations weren't malicious," she continued. "They were procedural. That's the problem." She pointed to a paragraph highlighted in pencil. Guidance. Child displacement. April 1945. Temporary separation, not to exceed 48 hours without guardian contact. 48 hours, Briggs said. In all 3 cases, the window was exceeded, not because someone ordered it, but because no one was empowered to stop it. Another advisor leaned forward. "You're saying responsibility was distributed?" "Yes," Briggs replied, "so evenly that it disappeared." No one spoke. They all understood the implication. If the system itself caused harm, then fixing it meant admitting victory had blind spots, and no one liked that in August 1945. August 19th, 1945, 6:32 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The letter arrived, folded twice, sealed once. Anna recognized the weight of official paper immediately. Her hands went cold before she opened it. "Notice of administrative review. Your testimony has been referenced in an internal procedural assessment." Referenced, not vindicated, not corrected, but no longer ignored. She sat down slowly, Greta and Emil watching her face. "What is it?" Emil asked. Anna read the letter again, then folded it carefully. "They are looking," she said. "At what?" Greta asked. Anna hesitated. "At how promises are made," she said finally, "and how they are broken." August 21st, 1945, 9:47 a.m. Frankfurt. The committee's conclusion was typed with careful neutrality. Findings: internal. No evidence of intentional wrongdoing. Evidence of systemic procedural failure. Recommendations: policy revision, staff retraining, mandatory guardian contact, no prosecutions, no headlines, no names, but also no denial. One advisor signed reluctantly. Another added a note in the margin. "This must not happen again." September 2nd, 1945, 4:18 p.m. Allied Press Office. A press release was drafted and revised 7 times. The final version mentioned improvements to child welfare protocols. It did not mention deaths. It did not mention Magdeburg. It did not mention 2 days. Anna read about it weeks later in a newspaper so thin it tore when she unfolded it. She clipped the article and placed it inside her notebook. Not as proof, as context. September 10th, 1945, 11:03 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. Anna wrote one final entry. They did not say his name, but they changed the rule that took him. She closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf above the table. Greta slept. Emil breathed evenly. Outside, a tram rattled past, carrying people who were already learning how to live in peacetime. Justice had not arrived. But something else had. Acknowledgement. Quiet. Incomplete, but real. And in a war defined by numbers and victories that mattered more than anyone would ever admit aloud. Because now, when someone said temporary, it would no longer be an empty word. It would carry a cost. One paid already. November 22nd, 1945, 8:55 a.m. Allied Training Center. Cassell. The classroom smelled of chalk and damp wool. New posters lined the walls clean. Instructional. Confident. Child welfare protocols updated. A diagram showed arrows and time windows. 48 hours circled in red. Beneath it, a new sentence had been added in bold. Guardian contact is mandatory prior to any extension. A captain stood at the front, tapping the poster with a pointer. "This is not optional," she said. "No extensions without documented guardian contact. No exceptions." Rows of officers nodded. Pen scratched. Someone yawned. The war was over. Training felt like housekeeping. No one spoke the names. No one mentioned Magdeburg. Reforms, Anna would later learn, were always quieter than consequences. December 4th, 1945, 3:12 p.m. Magdeburg winter returned like a verdict. Snow packed into the cracks of broken buildings, turning rubble into white mounds that softened nothing. Anna walked Greta and Emil to school through streets that still felt temporary structures half rebuilt, routines half formed. At the school gate, a teacher knelt to adjust Emil's scarf. "You're early," she said kindly. Emil nodded. He liked being early. It meant control. Inside the classroom, a bell rang. Anna watched the children disappear into warmth and noise and rules that at least Eric kept families intact. She turned for home. Halfway down the block, a truck backfired. The sound cracked the air like a shot. Anna froze. Her breath stalled. Her hands curled. For a second, she was back on the road, the mud, the clipboard, the word temporary. The moment passed. She exhaled and kept walking. Reforms couldn't reach that place. January 9th, 1946, 10:07 a.m. Allied Records Depot. Hala. Lieutenant Feldman returned the Keller file to the cabinet. The label had changed again. Closed policy action taken. He stood there longer than necessary, reading the spine as if the words might rearrange themselves into something truer. Policy action taken? It meant rules were different now. It did not mean the past was corrected. Feldman slid the drawer shut and felt the small, persistent discomfort that came with knowing you had helped too late. February 2nd, 1946. 6:41 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The stove hissed, soup simmered. Greta set the table with careful symmetry. Emil practiced writing numbers by the window, erasing and rewriting until the shapes were perfect. Anna unfolded a letter from a relief organization offering additional rations for families with documented losses. The language was gentle, the boxers precise. Name: Keller Lucas. Age: 4. Date: May 14th, 1945. She paused at the final line. Kazan left it blank. Some blanks were honest. That night, after the children slept, Anna took out her notebook again. She reread the entries she had made in the weeks after dates. Words. Times. The list had stopped growing months ago. She added one sentence at the end. They fixed the rule. They didn't fix what it broke. She closed the notebook and put it away. March 19th, 1946, 11:23 a.m. Castle Training Center. A young lieutenant raised a hand. "What if the Guardian can't be located within 48 hours? He asked. The instructor didn't hesitate. Then you escalate. You do not extend without contact. And if escalation takes time, then you wait, she said. You do not move the child. Waiting was now the instruction. The lieutenant nodded, scribbling. Somewhere, a future did not happen. April 7th, 1946, 5:08 p.m. Magdeburg Riverside Spring returned, tentative and unsure. Anna walked with Greta and Emil along the river, the water high and fast. Greta skipped stones again. One finally skimmed twice before sinking. Emil smiled small. Private. Did they change it everywhere? Greta asked. Yes, Anna said. Greta thought about this, so other children won't. Anna stopped walking. She knelt to greet his level, choosing words that would not fracture what little certainty remained. So other children will go home, she said. They stood there, watching the river carry winter away. May 14th, 1946, 9:02 p.m. 1 year later, Anna lit a candle. Not a ritual for the world, just for the room. Greta and Emil sat beside her, hands folded, faces serious. Outside, a radio played softly news about elections, about plans, about the future. Anna spoke Lucas's name once. They sat in silence. After silence, she had learned, could be chosen. That made all the difference. Across Germany, protocols held. Extensions were rare. Guardians were contacted. The 48 hours stayed intact, like a line drawn where none had been before. Quiet reforms did their work, but they could not repair the place inside Anna where time had turned against her. They could not return what was taken. They could not apologize in a language grief recognized. They could only prevent repetition, and prevention imperfect, delayed, and invisible was the legacy no parade would ever honor. Anna blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, thin and decisive, and vanished. September 14th, 1952, 6:21 a.m. Magdeburg. The sound came before the thought. A Tracolder, now post-war, civilian rumbled down the street outside Anna Keller's apartment. The engine coughed. Tense to date. Tires hissed against dampstone. Anna woke sitting upright, heart already racing. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling looked wrong. The light at the window was the wrong color. Her body had decided the past was present again. She listened. The truck idled. A door slammed. Voices drifted casual, unconcerned. Then the engine moved on. Anna pressed her palms against the mattress and breathed until the room reassembled itself. This was not 1945. Greta was 12. Now Emil 14. School books lay stacked on the table. The war had ended 7 years ago. The body did not care. September 14th, 1952, 7:48 a.m. Greta watched her mother carefully while tying her shoes. "You didn't sleep," Greta said. Anna smiled, the practiced kind. "I did." Greta didn't argue. She had learned when silence was a truer kindness. Emil entered, already dressed, hair combed with excessive precision. He had become meticulous in ways Anna recognized. Control was his language now. "How war, Greta?" "Today," he said. Anna nodded. "Thank you." As the door closed behind them, Anna stood alone in the kitchen and stared at the place where 3 cups used to sit. Memory was not an event. It was maintenance. October 3rd, 1952, 4:12 p.m. University of Leipzig, archive room. A doctoral student named Hans Richter paused over a set of Allied administrative reforms while researching post-war civilian welfare. His fingers traced a familiar phrase, mandatory guardian contact prior to extension. He frowned and pulled earlier drafts. The sentence wasn't there. It appeared suddenly mid-1945, fully formed, emphatic, and oddly specific. Richter flipped pages, following the revision trail backward. Something had forced the language. He made a note in the margin. Trigger for reform. Unclear. Unclear did not mean absent. It meant buried. September 14th, 1952, 6:21 a.m. Magdeburg. The sound came before the thought. A truckle now. Post-war civilian rumbled down the street outside Anna Keller's apartment. The engine coughed. Tin steadied. Tires hissed against damp stone. Anna woke sitting upright, heart already racing. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling looked wrong. The light at the window was the wrong color. Her body had decided the past was present again. The truck idled. A door slammed. Voices drifted casual, unconcerned. Then the engine moved on. Anna pressed her palms against the mattress and breathed until the room reassembled itself. This was not 1945. Greta was 12 now. Emil 14 school books lay stacked on the table. The war had ended 7 years ago. The body did not care. September 14th, 1952, 7:48 a.m. Kitchen. Greta watched her mother carefully while tying her shoes. "You didn't sleep?" Greta said. Anna smiled, the practiced kind. "I did." Greta didn't argue. She had learned when silence was a truer kindness. Emil entered, already dressed, hair combed with excessive precision. He had become meticulous in ways Anna recognized. Control was his language now. "I'll walk Greta today," he said. Anna nodded. "Thank you." As the door closed behind them, Anna stood alone in the kitchen and stared at the place where 3 cups used to sit. Memory was not an event. It was maintenance. October 3rd, 1952, 4:12 p.m. University of Leipzig, archive room. A doctoral student named Hans Richter paused over a set of Allied administrative reforms while researching post-war civilian welfare. His fingers traced a familiar phrase, mandatory guardian contact prior to extension. He frowned and pulled earlier drafts. The sentence wasn't there. It appeared suddenly mid-1945, fully formed, emphatic, and oddly specific. Richter flipped pages, following the revision trail backward. Something had forced the language. He made a note in the margin. Trigger for reform unclear. Unclear did not mean absent. It meant buried. October 12, 1952, 9:33 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. Anna wrote rarely now, but when she did, it was with precision. She opened her notebook to a blank page and wrote, "They fixed the rule because something broke. They never asked the people it broke." She closed the notebook and returned it to the shelf. That was enough. November 1st, 1952, 11:06 a.m. Schoolyard. A boy fell and scraped his knee. A teacher knelt, calling for his mother. The mother came running immediately, breathless, worried, angry. Anna watched from a distance, heart tightening for reasons she did not explain to herself. This is how it should be, she thought. Immediate, automatic, unquestioned. She turned away before the memory sharpened. December 24th, 1952, 10:58 p.m., Christmas Eve. Snow fell thick and silent. Greta sang softly while setting candles. Emil adjusted the radio, lowering it until the music became background rather than command. Anna sat between them. They did not speak Lucas's name tonight. They did not have to. He was present in the pauses between words, in the way Anna checked the door twice before bed, in the way Emil listened too closely to outside sounds, in the way Greta watched adults' faces before trusting what they said. Memory had not stayed quiet. It had simply learned how to live inside them without asking permission. January 19th, 1953, 2:17, Pakina, M.A., Allied Records, Deput, Frankfurt, Ernst, Richter, S. Request was denied. Access, restricted, file closed. He wasn't surprised. He had already learned what mattered. The rule had changed because it had needed to. That need had a source. Somewhere, someone had paid for it. Years passed. Anna aged. Greta grew certain. Emil grew careful. The war receded into textbooks and speeches and anniversaries that emphasized endings. But memory did not follow the calendar. It followed sound, language, promises. And whenever someone said temporary with too much confidence, Anna felt the old tightening in her chest, not panic anymore, but recognition. Because she knew what happened when time was treated lightly. She knew what happened when waiting became policy. And she knew that even when files closed and reforms held, the truth did not disappear. It stayed where it had always been, with the people who had lived through the gap. May 14th, 1965, 7:06 a.m. Magdeburg, 20 years later. The date still arrived before she was ready. Anna Keller woke before the light. The room cool and quiet. The city outside had changed. New buildings, smoother streets, fewer scars, but the morning carried the same stillness it always had on this day. She sat at the table and lit a candle. Greta was 27 now. Emil 30. Both lived elsewhere, building lives that no longer revolved around survival. They called often. They visited when they could. But today, Anna was alone. That was intentional. She opened the notebook she no longer added to. Its pages were worn. The ink faded in places. Dates, times. Words spoken by men who never imagined they would be remembered. 2 days. Temporary. Under review. She closed the notebook and did not read further. She didn't need to. May 14th, 1965, 9:42 a.m. Magdeburg School Archive. A young teacher named Clara Weiss reviewed historical materials for a lesson on post-war recovery. She paused at a line in the Civil Protection Manual. Mandatory guardian contact. Prior to extension of child separation, her students would never question this. To them, it was obvious. Natural. Humane. Clara circled the line and wrote in the margin. Why was this ever different? The answer was not in the book. It never would be. May 14th, 1965, 12:18 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The candle had burned low. Anna extinguished it carefully and opened the window. The air smelled of spring and distant traffic. Life, uninterrupted. She thought of the Americans not with hatred, not even with anger anymore, but with clarity. They had not meant to kill her son. That was the most dangerous part. They had meant to process him. To hold him. To wait. And in that waiting, responsibility had thinned until it vanished. That was the truth. No medal ceremony ever addressed. May 14th, 1965, 3:51 p.m. Frankfurt, Federal Archive. A clerk processed a routine transfer of documents. Among them was an Aladira procedural file, long since declassified, stamped with a final note added years earlier. Reform implemented following post-war civilian displacement review. No names. No locations. No mention of a 4-year-old boy. The file slid into storage. Closed. Again. May 14th, 1965, 6:30 p.m. Anna Keller's apartment. The phone rang. Anna answered without surprise. "It's me," Greta said. "I remembered." "So did I," Anna replied. They spoke briefly. Gently. There was nothing new to say. Afterward, Anna sat alone as the light faded. She did not need justice anymore. She needed the truth to be understood. And the truth was this. Lucas Keller did not die because the war was cruel. He did not die because medicine failed. He did not die because fate intervened. He died because time was treated casually by people who believed responsibility belonged to someone else. Because a promise was made lightly. Because temporary was allowed to stretch. Because no one stopped the clock. Somewhere, rules still held. Children were not moved without guardians. 48 hours mattered. Escalation was mandatory. These protections saved lives. But they were born from silence. And silence, once broken, never truly disappears. It echoes in policy, in memory, in the quiet moments when someone chooses to wait instead of act. Anna Keller turned off the light and went to bed. The candle was gone. The date would pass. But the truth's uncomfortable, unheroic, undeniable had already done what history often failed to do. It survived. END